Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another movie review. I know I've had a little bit of a drought here the past couple weeks. I've been very busy with a lot of things, but here we are back again for what is likely to be not just the biggest movie of the year, but one of the biggest movies of all time. And here today, I am so thankful and grateful to be joined by my good friend, Ryan Tomas Maguire. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, good sir. Thank you for having me on the show again. So,
Well, dude, I'm so happy I could have someone on this episode because I wouldn't want to have it any other way. You know, this is such a huge film and long time in the making, so had to have someone on. Very grateful you're here. And yeah, so let's start talking about Avatar: The Way of Water, the sequel to the 2009 film
let's get
Avatar,
into it.
directed by James Cameron, starring Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, Stephen Lang, Kate Winslet, and many more. This film takes place where the last film left off. We're back on the planet of Pandora. Jake Sully has a family, and then the Sky People come back once again, and the threat against his family and his life are called into question, and they have to leave the jungle and head to the water. And let me say straight off, because I think this has to be said. Because look, a lot of people were saying, oh, you know, a lot of people were kind of split on Avatar. They didn't find the characters to be very interesting. The world building was great. Some people say the visual effects don't even hold up in that movie. I don't know what they're talking about. I still think they hold up to this day. And, you know, but granted, I could see why. I really liked the first Avatar. I thought it was really solid, but I had a lot of problems with the characterizations. But the world building was absolutely astounding. And I think that's what really excelled in that film. The world of Pandora, the environment that Cameron built through visuals. And I mean, let's be honest, if we can give Cameron one thing, he knows how to make a movie. Whether you love his films or not, I mean, both Titanic and Avatar are two of the top three highest grossing films of all time, with Avatar taking the top spot. So Cameron knows how to make money, and he knows how to make spectacle. So when people are saying, "Oh, why do we need more Avatar movies?" You know, it's been way too long. The one thing we always say, never bet against Cameron. And a lot of people
Yeah.
would say that that is the case with this movie. Now, look, before we get in to whether we loved it or not, one thing must be said. On a technical level, this is one of the most impressive films ever made because one, it's basically entirely done on green screen, and two, it is just feels like a world that's so lived in, so vibrant, so beautiful. It feels so seamless. You would believe that Pandora's an actual place where you could go and film, and that these characters are legitimate beings on this planet. It's absolutely incredible. I don't think the world building is as good as the first one, but granted, there's so much to chew on visually, and just, oh my goodness. If this does not win the Oscar for visual effects, I mean, come on. Like, that would be a crime of the century, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, that last point I especially agree with because just really quickly, because I got to build it up. I do also like the first Avatar, but you and I are seem to be on the exact same
Mhm.
page with the first one. It is a good movie. Is the plot a bit tired? Yeah, I think we've seen it done before in great stuff, no less. But I think the unique thing was having Jake Sully in the lead. I do think Sam Worthington, I do like that character of Jake Sully.
Mhm.
Zoe Saldana as Neytiri not only gives the best performance, I do think that is the best character in the movie as
Yeah.
well. Um, the world building is sensational. Like you really just Pandora feels like a real environment, a tangible location that you could go to, like you said. But if anything, the fact that it's tired and as entertaining as I think Stephen Lang is as the villain, and he has some funny quips in it, it is a very one-dimensional character.
Yeah. And
That being said, oh, sorry, you want to go
no,
first?
no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
So just to wrap it up, uh, the second movie, since you talked about, we'll get into the story, but if we're just talking about the visuals, again, it's a masterpiece. If
Mhm.
if we're just grading movies based on the technical qualities, easily 10 out of 10 in my opinion. Like you said, I do think the world building it goes a little deeper in the first one, but I think what Cameron does specifically with the underwater segments was breathtaking.
Yeah, and just the fact that he actually like filmed them underwater in like motion capture, because I believe Kate Winslet said at one point she came out of the water and she asked, "Am I dead?" And
Because
I
she had to
think
hold
that
her breath for like 7 minutes or something.
that's
So
nuts, man. And it makes sense because even though it feels like, oh, like as I said, it feels lived in, but at the same time, you know that these are visual effects being done as good as they are. You still wouldn't expect them to be
yeah,
underwater that long, though in the film they are underneath there for a long time. And I think that really adds to a
oh
lot
yeah,
of the tension and some of the more action oriented scenes where there's a lot going on and the stakes are super high. And what I will say about this film and why, well, I'll get into this later, but I think the stakes are even higher in this one because I'll just say it. I think that this is definitely an improvement on the original film. Like, that's the thing. Cameron, look at his track
absolutely.
record. Terminator 2, better than the original film, which is already amazing. Aliens, I would even argue, is a more heartfelt and engaging story than the first Alien, as masterful as Ridley Scott's directing was in that. And this is once again better than the first. I still feel like some of the characterizations are a little thin, but I feel like there's a lot more interesting stuff going on in the way they present it. Because obviously, we said Stephen Lang is a movie. We're not going to get into spoilers, but it's really interesting how he's in the story, as well as Sigourney Weaver, because she plays the adopted daughter of the Soli family in this,
Yeah,
and she is great in this once again. And it's just so funny that she's playing a child of,
she's so good in it,
act.
and she's great in everything too.
Oh yeah, and,
Yeah,
and obviously James Cameron director to a Best Actress nomination in Aliens. But and I just find
yeah,
it so funny that she's like playing their kid, but like in real life she's older than the actual parents. I don't know. It's pretty funny that they have a 70-year-old playing their daughter. But regardless, she sells it, and I think she's one of the most interesting characters in the movie because, as we said with the first movie, characters not entirely that interesting. Now I do feel like they are a little bit archetypal, as I said with the first one, but I think there's so much more emotion to the story here because this movie really is, because obviously the first one is about, just learning your place in this world and learning who you're meant to be, all that, environmental disasters and corporate greed, which, tie into this movie as well. But this movie's really about family. I'm not trying to say in like a Fast and Furious, hey, bro, you family, bro. But I think it's so effective.
or Princess Leia in The Last Jedi.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
no, that's the thing. It's so
yeah,
effective the way that they do this because I think they really, more than anything, the characters that really stood out to me were the kids. Because you spent the most time with them throughout the narrative, especially their youngest son, who I'm blanking on who played him in the movie. Let me just look that up real quick. Yeah, it's Britton Dalton is really, really good because he's really the one that you follow throughout the entire narrative. And I liked his character quite a bit, even though he's kind of like the edgy teenager. You understand his frustrations and you understand his plight. But really, I think that that is where the heart of this movie comes from, which I feel is lacking from the original. Like, yeah, that the original has its moments, but I don't think anything quite like this film.
yeah. The closest thing I can think of, well, in the first one, I think the biggest heartfelt moments you come towards the end with the
Yeah.
climactic battle. I mean, spoilers for the first movie, but when Sute, I believe his name is, that character, when he gets shot and falls off the plane, I remember like feeling the power of that scene when I was younger, but and it still affects me to an extent. And also when they bomb Home Tree in the beginning or
Yeah.
towards the end of that movie, that was a big deal. But yeah, going back real quick, what you said about Sigourney Weaver, she's phenomenal in this movie as that
Oh yeah.
character, and I really love too how one, I love the working relationship with her and Cameron, and two, I'd be lying if I didn't chuckle when Jake Sully walks up to her and he just goes, "What's going on, baby girl?" When she's like, what, 20 years his senior
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
But you buy into it. You buy into it. And I think that
Exactly. So
yeah. I
And
think
it's
that
not just
shows
the
you
technology, it's the performances too. So
right. It all goes hand in hand because you wouldn't believe if that was actually just Sigourney Weaver on set. But regardless, I think that this movie really, I think, emotionally hits in a way that the first one didn't. And I'll tell you, the third act of this film might be the best third act that James Cameron's ever done, or at least on par with Terminator 2. It is unbelievably directed.
yeah.
The pathos is so much felt. There's one thing that I'm not 100% sure on, but I kind of get what he's going at, which I won't get into this video because it's a spoiler. But man, I really felt the stakes more than anything, especially compared to the first movie. That final hour is fantastic in the first movie, but there's so much more to chew on and to kind of like be worried about, which I didn't feel in the first Avatar whatsoever.
Yeah, that's really tough because, as you know, I mean, I'm a big Cameron fan. Aliens is like in my top 10 favorite movies of all
Mhm.
time. So the battle between Ripley and the Queen is like
Yeah, it's up
iconic.
there too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'd say, that's a tough one. I mean, because I was there with you. I mean, we didn't see it together,
Right,
but
right.
I was there with you emotionally. Like, I'm like, this is so intense. The not only is the action epic, because I mean, come on, it's if even if you're not a huge Cameron fan, you know he's gonna bring the action. Like, you'd be
Right.
lying if you say his action wasn't great. And like, but again, when you have the family element in it, and I didn't think it was as like by the numbers as some people are making it to be, because I do think the performances sell that you love these characters. So I was there for the ride, but you do make a good point. Now, again, not to get into spoilers, but some hefty stuff starts wrapping up towards the end, which I won't say,
Yeah.
but you're gripped to your seat. You're like, oh, like anything could happen at this point. So
No, and that's the thing. I feel like James Cameron went in places in this movie that I don't think the first one would have even dared to go. And I think that
yeah,
plays to this movie's strengths and improves on its predecessor because that's what all great Empire Strikes Back did it. Terminator 2 did it. There's so many movies that follow this template, but I feel like not all of them hit it a certain way. You could even say Kung Fu Panda 2 did it, but that's not like the greatest movie ever made. But still really good. And I have to mention some of the other actors because Kate Winslet, like you almost don't realize she's in the movie. Yet again, another longtime Cameron
yeah,
collaborator, and she's great in the scenes. That she really has some emotionally hefty scenes, and I think Cliff Curtis as her husband, who's the chief of like the reef people, I thought
yeah.
he was really solid as well.
He
Um,
was. He's one of my. I think he's a very underrated actor. So,
mhm.
and it's cool to see him in something like this, a big tentpole
Yeah,
film.
yeah, because this is definitely a huge, because that's the thing. I mean, this movie was one of the most expensive movies ever made. Could be the most expensive movie ever made if we get those budget numbers. But the thing is, this movie has to make back its budget, and I think just having a film like this that's so like yet again, this is another example like Top Gun Maverick, and I'll get into which sequel I think is better. But where you have the sequel it goes bigger and better, and it makes a lot of money because of it. Because people still want to see films like this. Go have a reason to go see this in theaters. And my goodness, guys, I know I'm not always big on 3D. Like, oh, you have to go see a movie in 3D, but I think you got to see this in IMAX 3D. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
only that's how Cameron
100%.
intended it. And I think it really will enhance the experience of it. Um, but I do want to get into some things. Well, actually, Ryan, I've been talking a lot. How about you give me some of your thoughts here before I go on into some of my negatives I have with the film?
Sure. I mean, just a couple of key points. I definitely thought, um, I know it's strange. I know a lot of people really do think this is another story that's been done before, and I guess you can say that, but what I got out of it, my personal experience was it kind of felt like a hangout movie, which I didn't expect, or at
Mhm.
least a portion of it. Like the second act, you really are just kind of immersing yourself in the way of water, like this water region of Pandora. I really was swept away by not just the visuals, but the performances. Like, sure, you could say, yeah, like this is stuff that we've seen before on a superficial level, but I really do feel like the performers were sincere and they really did their homework and loved these individual characters. Even Colonel Quaritch, the villain from the first movie, um, not that they go too far, but I actually was surprised at how much they humanized him in this. And I was just like, for somebody who was very, again, I like Stephen Lang, the performer. The character itself is very one note. But this movie in particular, I was just like, they're actually adding a bit of depth to him. Like, you're not exactly sure why he hates the Na'vi so much. You just know he has a mission and he has to fulfill it.
Right. Without getting too into it, obviously, because, you know.
Yeah, I won't
Yeah.
ruin why. I'll say the reason why Stephen Lang comes back, I
Mhm.
bought into it. I thought that was really cool.
Right. No, and I think that's really interesting. Also, there's a character named Spider who he's like a human who's kind of like raised by the Na'vi, and
Yeah,
he was really interesting character. Champion plays him. I don't think his performance is like amazing, but I think he played a very interesting role in the film. And I know some people are split on it. I don't know, like, I liked him throughout the entire thing. I know where maybe some people have problems, but I didn't really think he was that big of an issue, as a character. And also, yet again, I just have to mention the action. I mean, especially in that third act, my goodness, Cameron knows how to direct an action scene every single
yeah.
time he comes out with a movie. Like, it's always worth the wait just to see what he's going to throw on the screen. But I will say, if I have negatives with this movie, because I'll be honest, uh, one may be bigger, but I think another sequel is better, and that's Top Gun Maverick. Because
Okay.
as much as this does improve on the original, I feel like being 3 hours and 12 minutes didn't have to be that long because I feel a lot of it is really padded out. Especially with
Sure.
this whole subplot with a whale, which I like and I understand what Cameron's going for, but there's a certain thing that they touch on when it comes to the subplot that I think would have almost because obviously the humans in this once again are like the greedy corporate mongers. I mean, it's so obvious, and that's another thing. Yet again, a lot of this stuff is obvious. It wasn't the first one, so of course it's going to be again. But I feel like they mentioned something that could have been a much more gray sort of argument that could have been made, but yet the film still presents them in a very like cliche, stereotypical way. Oh, money, 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 And I thought that they really could have dived into that a little bit more and honed in into the grayness of the circumstances that they were in.
Sure.
But I understand the message that Karen was getting at, protecting the waters, protecting the animals that we live with. And I respect that and appreciate what he was going for on a I guess a moral level. And so I get what he was doing. I just feel like it didn't work 100% of the time, and it really felt like they could have cut down on a lot of runtime and really polished this narrative. Because one of my friends said this, and it was really kind of like Cameron wanking off to himself or something. And I mean, with good reason, because he's poured all his money in this movie and he has all these amazing visuals and spent so much time on it. You can't take that away. But I feel like if this movie was like 240, I would have been fine. This is my take.
Yeah, you think like a bit more fat could have been trimmed from
Absolutely, yeah. There's a little too much fat on the bones of this film.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's tough. Maybe it's funny. I'm talking about seeing it again, even though it's over 3 hours, but
Yeah, because he said you will see it again. He even said that himself.
I'm just like, I think because I was so swept away by it, I was just like, and I even more so than the first movie, I think it really is because of the younger cast. Like, and I do like Sam Worthington in this and Zoe Saldana, but I really do think the younger cast makes you empathize with them a bit more. I think also too what they touch upon is I don't think this is necessarily a spoiler, but the fact that Jake Sully, of course, being a human turned into a Navi, they
Mm,
kind of address how they feel like outcasts in a way. And I think James Cameron has a way of having this universality in his stories where he has this sort of through line that everybody can relate to one way or another. placed on top of this sort of romanticized world that he has. Like I think Titanic worked for a lot of people because I know you're not a fan of some of the melodramatic dialogue in
No,
that movie, but or even the villain Billy Zane. He really likes his cheesy villains.
for some
But like
reason he get, but then you got the T2000. So what can I tell you?
yeah, Robert Pattinson, Robert
Yeah,
Patrick makes up for that in
yeah.
T2. So
No, but
but yeah,
I think that, you know, there's definitely moments because I think even Jake has an arc in this, even though he's not the focus of it. These
yeah.
characters learn a lot by the end of the movie, and I think Zoe Saldana has some amazing moments of acting in this where I was absolutely blown away. And you
Dude,
know,
I'm not gonna give it away.
yeah,
I'm not gonna say anything. It's just there's something at the end, and I feel like you know what scene I'm talking about, where she is just in. Again, it has to deal with the humans overtaking Pandora, and it deals
mm,
with similar stuff in the first movie. This movie in particular, you see just pure fear and rage in her eyes, and I was like, I believe that she could kill somebody. Like
yeah,
I was
no,
sold on
it's an incredible there's some incredible moments with her in this narrative. And yeah, man, I really think that this is going to be a huge movie once again because Cameron's up to bat. And that's the thing, like he comes out with a movie, you're going to see it. Whether you say you're excited for it or not, your ass is going to be sitting in that seat and enjoying what Cameron has to bring you. But yeah, guys, I mean, look, on a technical level, this is one of the greatest movies ever made. Just it that's the thing I love so much about Cameron, how he's able to push forward the medium technologically in ways that we can't even comprehend, but are still being felt to this day. I mean, after Avatar came out, everything was in 3D, even if it wasn't shot in 3D. But Cameron's really the only one
it.
who truly knows how to hone in on it and really enhance the effect of it, if you will. And I think yet again, this is another example, but yet again, the story's stronger, the characters are stronger. I don't, yet again, it could have been trimmed down. I would have been completely fine with that. But let's be honest, he delivered once again. You know, I'm not necessarily disappointed by this movie because I didn't fully love the first. But yeah, with that out of the way, I'm gonna give Avatar: The Way of Water 8 out of 10. Really, really good movie. You gotta check this out, and maybe I'll even go see it again. I don't know. I'm not gonna rush back out to theaters to see it, but I think it's one of Cameron's strongest films. And yeah, definitely this holiday season, this is a must see.
Yeah, pretty much for the most part, I agree with all your points. Although it's tough because even though you talk about the length, while I understand that, I was just completely blown away by this film in every possible fashion. I think it may not be a perfect score, but I'd still give it a really high, like 9.5 out of 10.
Wow. Okay.
And like I loved it because I was
Yeah.
going in expecting it to be like a 3.5 out of 5 or something. Like I figured it'll be a good cinematic experience, not necessarily a memorable film. I love this movie. I'm gonna go see it again. I'll probably try and see it again.
Hey, I won't take that away from you, man. As I said, I might even go see it again as well. And then we'll give more money to the Disney overlords. Yay. Anyway, you just gotta go see this out
Oh,
of respect for James Cameron because he was going to
yeah,
do this anyway. He's devoting the rest of his life to this series. So, you know, you gotta
yeah.
give the man some shine and some praise. But yeah, guys, what did you think of Avatar: The Way of Water? Have you seen it yet? Drop your comments down below. Let us know what you think. And of course, Ryan, I want to thank you once again for coming on and talking about this movie. Really great discussion as always.
Thank you for having me again. And you guys can look me up at Ridge Cinema or Instagram and Snapchat Ryan T. Maguire. So I'm pretty easy to find.
And we'll drop the links down below for you just so you have that there. So yeah, guys, hope you enjoy this movie. And of course, stay on the lookout for more movie reviews. But I'll tell you something, going to be some Christmas related content this weekend. So you're not going to want to miss that. And
Ooh,
in step with the season, you got to be there for it. So be on the lookout. And of course, continuing on with the top 90 albums of the 90s. We're almost there, guys. So stick with us. And yeah, guys, until the next video, we'll see you later. Take it easy.